YouTube crew, what is going on, and welcome back to another video. Now, with the recent buffs and nerfs of both lethals and tacticals, I wanted to spend a few minutes today talking about what are the best lethals and tacticals to be running right now for both Rebirth Island and Caldera. So we're going to start off by taking a little bit of time to break down the patch notes so that we know exactly what was changed, exactly what was buffed and nerfed, and how that impacts our gameplay. Then we're going to jump into what I would recommend you run, and I'm actually going to give you some tips on how to be most effective with those lethals and tacticals. So, in terms of the patch notes here, let's look at lethal equipment first. Claymore damage increased to 200. So if you have two plates basically right off of loadout, getting loadout, and you hit a Claymore, you're going to go down in that scenario. Frag grenades were given a huge buff here. Damage increased to 112 and 225. This 225, which means basically if you have two plates in or have taken a little bit of damage and you get hit direct by a frag grenade, you are now going to go down. Previously, it only dealt 140 damage, which was like nothing. Molotov cocktail, again, given a huge buff here. Duration increased to 12 and a half seconds. 12 and a half seconds is so long where that is actually dealing damage, and we see that the damage per tick has increased. Proximity mines, not too concerned about that there. There might be a few situations where you go down, whereas you wouldn't have in a past situation, but it was given a little bit of a buff. Semtex, give it a small little buff here, dealing a little bit more damage. And then throwing knives, damage increased to 250 up from 200, which basically means if you throwing knife somebody in the upper torso or head and they have full plates, they go down in that scenario. But ultimately, you know, we probably shouldn't be going around throwing knives at people anyway. We want to be shooting them instead. So not really a huge difference there. In terms of tactical equipment, three things that we want to talk about. Heartbeat sensor was given a huge nerf. Pulse time increased to 6 seconds, up from 3 seconds. You are going to notice a difference in that pulse time. Next up, we look at stims, which you've probably seen videos of already. Will apply a 3-second boost that increases movement, slide, and sprint speed. This is going to allow you to finesse opponents and really break people's cameras. It's absolutely insane what stims do, which you've probably seen videos of. And then stun grenades were given a pretty big nerf here. The stun duration was decreased to 2.5, 4.5 seconds, depending on how strong you hit them. And it used to be 4.7, 5.5. So pretty big nerf there, pretty big change with stun grenades. Let's go ahead and get into what I would advise you use. Okay, let's start off by talking about lethals. Now, in terms of lethals, even with the buffs, there's only two things that I would recommend you running. The first is going to be throwing knives. This allows you to easily thirst kills, saves bullets, allows you to stay in fights longer because you don't have to reload as often, and you can find throwing knives all over the map, so it's pretty easy to replenish them. The second is actually Semtex. Now, I'm going to tell you why I'm not running some of the other lethals in a second, but for Semtex, I just love the versatility of them, and you kind of have two ways you can use these. The first is to gain info, meaning if you think somebody's in a building, if you think they're in a room, you're going to throw that Semtex up top. If you get a damage hit on them, then you know that they're in there, you can go ahead and challenge. The second is to actually deal damage. You know somebody's in a building or in a room, you're going to throw that Semtex up, you're going to get the damage hit, and then you can go ahead and challenge. So that's kind of my two tips for using Semtex. Now, why am I not using the other ones? I want to start with Claymores and Prox Mines. If you are playing on Caldera and you're a strategic player looking to get wins, not necessarily too concerned about kills, you can go ahead and run Claymores and Proximity Mines and play strategy, kind of use this to hold down a building. Now, in terms of frag grenades, they're just not very convenient for a high aggressive player. They take 5 seconds to cook. Yes, they deal a lot of damage, but they take time to cook. You can't really find them across the map very often. And, you know, the timing has to be right. So I would not recommend running frag grenades. Molotov cocktail, actually, let's talk C4s. C4s, just, you can't throw them nearly as far anymore, so take C4s out of the picture. Molotovs and thermites, I have a very unique perspective on why you should not run Molotovs and thermites. I know a lot of people love to use these, but in my opinion, for high aggressive players and people looking to get more kills or even just become more consistent, these take you out of fight. So if you down somebody on top of the stairs and you throw a Molotov, now you cannot go re-challenge that person without taking damage yourself, and they last a while. So these kind of take you out of fights, in my opinion. Yes, you can use them to thirst kills, but you can also use a throwing knife. Yes, you can use these to get info, but you can also use a Semtex. So I just don't, in my opinion, feel that Molotovs or thermites are the best option compared to a throwing knife or a Semtex. So for our tacticals here, we really have one of 4 options. The first and the most obvious one is the heartbeat sensor. Now, as I mentioned, this got a pretty significant nerf. It pulses every 6 seconds now, as opposed to every 3, which is what it was before. But I still feel like it is a very valuable tool. You do have to be strategic about how you use it, though. You can't rely on it as much as you used to. And I promise you, if you use a heartbeat sensor, you're going to pull that thing out at some point, and it's just not going to pulse for you. It's a very noticeable difference, that 6 seconds versus 3. So you have to be a little bit more strategic, a little bit more cognizant about when you are using it. Now, the second is stims, which, as I mentioned, got a pretty significant buff. Stims now provide a massive 3-second boost in terms of speed and sliding. So You can use these if you want to. They do take a little bit of skill. They take a lot of getting used to actually use these effectively, timing that slide and that speed boost correctly to finesse and break your opponent's camera. Now, the other two that we can run are flash and stun grenades, and I kind of want to put these two together in terms of tips for using them. Very similar to Semtex, we have two ways that we can use these. The first is to gain info, meaning we think somebody's in a building, we think somebody's in a room, so we're going to go ahead and throw that flash or that stun up there. If we get a hit on it, now we know that person is in there, and we can go ahead and challenge. The second is to actually use them as they are intended, meaning we know somebody's in a building, we know somebody's in a room, we're going to go ahead and throw that flash or that stun up there so that they can't challenge us, and we're going to go ahead and push in. Now, in terms of what I am running, I think it really comes down to your level of awareness and how confident you feel that you can keep UAVs up. If you feel like you struggle with awareness and you struggle to keep UAVs up, then you probably want to use a heartbeat sensor to understand where people actually are, to really get that info of, okay, how far away are they? And then you can start to clear that area. If you feel like you have good awareness in terms of seeing people, hearing people, and you have the ability to keep UAVs up, I would use flash grenades. Now, if you really want to kind of push the issue and start to get to a next level and use these to your advantage and get some good clips, go ahead and use stims. But overall, I just don't think that they are the most beneficial to people in terms of starting to get more kills. I think flash grenades are much more useful, kind of rendering your opponent useless because they can't see anything and they get the big white screen and they're just running into walls. So I hope you found today's video helpful. As I always say, let's get better today, and I will see you tomorrow.